Picture a squad of Roman soldiers kicking down your door at midnight. They aren't here to arrest you for a crime. They aren't here to collect a tax debt. They are here for your daughter. She is 13 years old. She is terrified, but the soldiers don't see a child. They see a unit of production. They see a line item on a government document. They pull out a wax tablet and a bronze stylus. They write down her age. They check her hair color. They inspect her teeth like they are buying a horse at a dusty street market. This is the year 39 AD. This is the Roman Empire under Caligula. And you are about to witness the moment history stopped being about glory and started being about the industrialization of human suffering. For centuries, we have been told stories of Roman marble, Roman laws, and Roman conquest. But there is a chapter so dark, so calculated, and so efficiently buried that most history books won't even whisper its name. We are talking about a system, not a random act of a madman, but a cold, functioning machine designed to identify, seize, and mentally destroy the youngest girls in the empire. Caligula didn't just want victims. He wanted a database. He turned the Roman bureaucracy into a predator. Think about the precision. This wasn't chaos. This was paperwork. Imperial officers moved through the city of Rome with a checklist. They had quotas to fill. They had schedules to meet. They moved from the high-end villas of the elite to the crowded, stinking apartments of the poor. No one was safe. If a girl fit the criteria, if she was the right age, if she had the right look, if she was pure according to the state's invasive standards, she was gone. She was assigned a number. She was stripped of her name. In the eyes of the Roman state, she was no longer a person. She was livestock on a ledger. This is the precise machinery that Caligula engineered. He took the same administrative talent that built the roads and managed the grain supply, and he pointed it at the hearts of Roman families. He created a world where the government knew exactly where your children were sleeping and exactly when they were going to take them. The horror wasn't just in the act of taking them. The horror was in the columns and rows. The horror was in the fact that a clerk sat in a quiet office and filed the agony of 1,000 families into a neat wooden cabinet. Stay with us till the end for valuable insights. Like, subscribe, and share to support the channel. Imagine you are a Roman father. You hear the heavy thud of sandals outside. You see the flickering of torches through the gaps in your door. But you don't reach for a sword. You don't hide your daughter in the cellar. Instead, you open the door with a smile. You bow. You offer the soldiers wine. This is the part of the story that is truly unbearable. The violence of the Roman state was expected, but the reaction of the Roman parents was something much more disturbing. Across the empire, when the imperial wagons rolled into a neighborhood to collect 13-year-old girls, the parents didn't fight back. They celebrated. They sent thank-you letters to the palace. They held small parties. They bragged to their neighbors that their daughter had been selected. In the year 39 AD, Caligula had achieved the ultimate victory of a tyrant. He had convinced his victims that their destruction was an honor. To be noticed by the emperor, for any reason, was the highest form of social currency in Rome. If your daughter was taken into the system, it meant your family was relevant. It meant you were seen by the living God on the throne. The social machinery of Rome was as lethal as its military. If you showed grief, you were a traitor. If you cried when they dragged your child away, you were insulting the emperor's generosity. So, mothers spent hours bathing their daughters in scented oils. They braided their hair with gold thread. They dressed them in the finest white linen. They turned their own children into offerings. They handed them over to the guards, and then they stood in the street and waved until the dust from the wagons settled. But behind those forced smiles, the psychological rot was setting in. This was a precisely engineered trap. By making the parents complicit, Caligula ensured they could never revolt. How can you lead a rebellion against a man you just thanked for taking your child? You can't. You are broken. You are silent. You are part of the machine now. The Roman state didn't just take the daughters. It stole the souls of the parents, leaving them to live in a house that was suddenly, violently quiet. The wagons did not stop at a dungeon. They did not pull up to a stone prison with iron bars and the smell of rot. Instead, the girls were taken to a place called the Aurelia Chambers. Imagine a palace that looks like a dream. The walls are covered in silk so soft it feels like water against your skin. The air is thick with the scent of expensive incense, frankincense and myrrh imported from the edges of the known world. There are piles of honeyed figs, roasted meats, and pastries on silver trays. This was the paradise Caligula built for his victims. But this luxury was the most dangerous weapon in the entire empire. In modern psychology, we call this a controlled environment. Caligula didn't want to break their bodies with chains. He wanted to dismantle their minds with confusion. When a 13-year-old girl is taken from her home, she expects horror. Her brain is ready for a fight. But when she is handed a silk robe and a plate of gold-leafed fruit, her internal compass breaks. Her eyes see beauty, but her gut feels a primal terror. This is called cognitive dissonance. It is a calculated strike against the human soul. The girls were assigned rooms. They were given servants who bowed to them. But they were forbidden from speaking. They were forbidden from looking at the sky. The heavy silk drapes were never opened. Day became night, and night became day, until time itself stopped making sense. They were trapped in a beautiful, silent void. No one told them why they were there. No one told them when they would see their parents again. The precise machinery was now working inside their heads, grinding away their sense of reality. In this silence, the only sound was the occasional echo of iron boots in the hallway after dark. Every girl in that palace would press her back against the wall, holding her breath, praying the footsteps would pass her door. When the lock finally turned, it wasn't a rescue. It was the beginning of the end. The girls who were taken out into the night were never the same when they were brought back. They were hollow. They were processed. They were the finished products of Caligula's factory of suffering. The Aurelia Chambers were not just a prison, they were a laboratory. While the girls were trapped in a cycle of silence and luxury, they were being watched. Every tear that fell onto a silk pillow was recorded. Every hushed conversation between two victims was documented by the attendants. These weren't servants, they were imperial spies. Their job was to identify any spark of resistance and extinguish it before it could become a flame. If two girls started to bond, if they found even a shred of comfort in each other's company, the machine pivoted. They were separated instantly. One would be moved to the far end of the palace, and the other would be left in total isolation. This is the precise machinery of psychological warfare. Caligula understood that human connection is a weapon. If you have a friend, you have hope. If you have hope, you can endure. So, he built a system to ensure that every girl felt completely and utterly alone in a room full of people. He wanted them shattered before he ever stepped through the door. By the time the emperor arrived, the girl sitting on the edge of the bed wasn't a human being anymore. She was a ghost. She had been emptied of her personality, her history, and her will to live. But Caligula's ambition was bigger than the chambers. He realized that if he could break the daughters of commoners, he could break the daughters of his enemies. He started targeting the Senate, the most powerful men in Rome, men who commanded thousands of soldiers, suddenly found their own homes under siege. An imperial messenger would arrive with a scroll. It wasn't an arrest warrant, it was an invitation to a banquet. But there was a catch. The senator was commanded to bring his wife and his teenage daughter. This was the moment the industrialized system moved into the light. At these banquets, Caligula would force the most powerful men in the world to watch as he appraised their families like cattle. He would walk down the line, touching their faces, commenting on their features, while the fathers stood frozen, their hands shaking against their robes. If a senator reached for his dagger, his entire bloodline would be wiped out by morning. So, they did what the commoners did. They stood there, they watched, and they thanked the emperor for the honor of his attention. To understand how Caligula held an entire empire hostage, you have to understand a concept called learned helplessness. In the 1960s, scientists discovered that if you trap a living creature in a cycle of pain and show it that no matter what it does, the pain won't stop, the creature eventually gives up. It doesn't fight. It doesn't run. It just lies down and accepts its fate. Caligula didn't have a PhD in psychology, but he was a master of this precise machinery. He knew that if he could break the spirit of a child in the Aurelia chambers, he could break the spirit of a general on the battlefield. The system was designed to produce a specific result: total emotional collapse. Every time a girl was taken, every time a father smiled while his heart was breaking, the machine grew stronger. Caligula was teaching Rome that resistance was not only impossible, it was invisible. He turned the entire city into a giant Aurelia chamber. The luxury was the grain doles and the gladiator games. The silence was the fear of the Praetorian Guard. And the iron boots were the taxes and the executions that could arrive at any door, at any hour, for any reason. This is why the Roman elites didn't move against him for so long. They were paralyzed. They were watching their daughters being registered like livestock and their wives being turned into weapons against them. Caligula would invite a senator to dinner, take his wife into a private room, and then return to the table to describe, in front of the entire court, exactly what he had done to her. He would look the husband in the eye and wait for a reaction. If the husband flinched, he was dead. If he cried, he was dead. So the husband sat there, took a sip of wine, and praised the emperor's vitality. This was the ultimate industrialization of agony. Caligula had turned the most powerful men in the world into spectators of their own destruction. He had filed human suffering into neat columns and rows, and turned the Roman government into a giant processing plant for trauma. He wasn't just a ruler, he was an engineer of despair. He had built a system so perfect, so surgical, that it seemed like it could run forever. But every machine has a breaking point, and the screams from the Aurelia chambers were starting to echo in places Caligula couldn't reach. Every machine, no matter how precise, eventually vibrates itself to pieces. By 41 AD, Caligula's industrialized system had created a vacuum of hatred that even the silk drapes of the palace could no longer contain. The girls in the Aurelia chambers, the humiliated senators, and the broken parents were no longer just victims. They were the fuel for a coming explosion. The emperor had spent years shattering the minds of everyone around him, but he forgot one thing: A man who has lost everything, including his dignity, has nothing left to fear. The end did not come on a battlefield. It did not come from a foreign invasion. It came from within the machinery itself. The Praetorian Guard, the very men who had kicked down the doors and registered the children, decided the factory had to be shut down. They waited for the Palatine Games. They waited for a moment when the emperor was walking through a narrow, underground corridor, moving from the theater to his private baths. It was a space so cramped that his elite German bodyguards couldn't swing their swords. In those final 60 seconds, the cold, calculated machine of Caligula met the raw, savage reality of a blade. The first strike didn't kill him, it hit him in the shoulder. Caligula, the man who had processed the agony of thousands into neat columns and rows, screamed like a human being for the first time in years. He tried to run, but the corridor was a trap, the same kind of trap he had built for so many others. 30 assassins closed in. They didn't just want him dead. They wanted to dismantle him the way he had dismantled their families. When the news reached the city, there was no celebration. There was only a heavy, ringing silence. The Aurelia chambers were opened, and the livestock on a ledger were allowed to walk out into the light. But they didn't run into the arms of their parents. They walked with vacant eyes, staring at a world that had sentenced them to carry that silence until death. The physical machinery was gone, but the psychological scars were surgical and permanent. This is why we drag buried history into the light. Because Caligula's system didn't die in that corridor. The precise machinery of turning humans into data, of using luxury to hide horror, and of forcing parents to smile while their children are taken, it is a blueprint that tyrants have used for 2,000 years. We investigate these chapters because the only way to break the machine is to understand exactly how it was built. History is not a story of the past, it is a warning for the future. If you enjoy dark untold history, subscribe because we uncover what others won't.